alternative, utilizing the outside block is certainly better than letting your opponent hit you. To execute this technique, it is important to have proper form. As my opponent throws an overhand right at the side of my head, I immediately rotate my hips and shoulders in a clockwise direction, place my left hand on the back of my left ear, and elevate my left shoulder. This causes the power of my opponent's punch to be absorbed by my left forearm and shoulder. In this sequence, I demonstrate how to execute a rear outside block. If you and your opponent are in the same fighting stance, it's best utilized to defend against his lead hook. And if you are in opposite fighting stances, it's best used to defend against his rear hook or overhand. To execute this block, I rotate my body slightly in a counterclockwise direction, place my right hand behind my right ear, and elevate my right shoulder. This causes the power of my opponent's punch to be absorbed by my right forearm and shoulder. Again, it is always better to evade your opponent's strikes, but when not possible, blocking is better than taking a hard hit to the face. In this sequence, I demonstrate how to use a lead elbow parry to block your opponent's cross. To pull this technique off, as my opponent's fist comes at me, I rotate my shoulders in a clockwise direction, drop my left hand towards my solar plexus, and sweep my left elbow across my body to deflect my opponent's punch. To ensure my head is protected, I reach my right hand towards the left side of my head so that my forearm is stretched across my chin. While parrying is more effective for positioning your body for a counter-strike, the lead elbow parry is an excellent technique to employ when you don't have excellent foot positioning or your opponent catches you off guard. However, before executing this technique, you must be certain that your opponent's punch is aimed at your head. By elevating your elbows, you make your midsection vulnerable to liver and kidney punches. It is also not wise to utilize the lead elbow parry too often because your opponent might begin tailoring his combinations to this defense. For example, he might throw a cross to get you to elevate your elbows and then follow up with a lead round kick to your liver. As I have mentioned, it's always wise to position yourself to the outside of your opponent's punching arm because it limits your chances of getting hit with a secondary strike. In this sequence, my opponent throws a jab. Instead of blocking his punch with a lead elbow parry, which would position me to the inside of his punching arm, I execute a rear elbow parry. To pull this off, I rotate my body in a counterclockwise direction, drop my right hand towards my solar plexus, and sweep my right elbow across my body to deflect my opponent's fist. To ensure my head is protected, I reach my left hand towards the right side of my head so that my forearm is stretched across my chin. Now that you understand how to parry and block your opponent's punches, I demonstrate how to avoid them altogether utilizing evasive movements such as the inside slip, outside slip, lean back, and shoulder roll. As you will see, utilizing proper evasive techniques not only allows you to defend against your opponent's attacks, but it also provides you with a dominant angle to launch an attack. While parries and blocks are both necessary to have in your arsenal, perfecting evasive movements can make you a master striker. The The inside slip is best utilized for evading straight punches such as the jab and cross. The movement involved is very similar to dropping into a low stance in that you lower your elevation by bending at the knees and sink your hips back, but instead of keeping your head centered, you move it away from your center line by bending at the waist and tilting your upper body. Deciding when to use the inside slip can be a little tricky. If you have the same stance as your opponent, meaning the same foot forward, the inside slip can be used to evade his jab. If you have the opposite stance, the inside slip can be used to evade his cross. In both cases, it is important to keep your back straight and your hands up. This will protect you from other strikes in his combination and position you to launch counterattacks. As I mentioned in the previous sequence, when in the same fighting stance as your opponent, the inside slip is best utilized to evade his jab. To pull this off, I sink my hips back, lower my elevation by bending at the knees, and dip my head towards my right side. Due to these actions, my opponent's punch sails past the side of my head. As I already mentioned, when in the opposite fighting stance as your opponent, the inside slip is best utilized to evade his cross. To pull this off, as my opponent's cross extends towards me, I begin rotating my shoulders in a clockwise direction and sink my hips back. Next, I lower my elevation by bending at the knees and dropping my head towards my right side. Due to my actions, his punch sails past the side of my head. If you've spent some time practicing the techniques I've already demonstrated, you should be quite familiar with the jab. You understand how to throw a jab, and you understand how to evade your opponent's jab using either a slip or a parry. In this sequence, I demonstrate how to blend jab offense and jab defense together. To accomplish this, all you have to do is slip your opponent's jab and throw a jab of your own at the same time. It is important to notice that I land my jab just as my opponent's jab arm reaches the end of its extension. This is key because when you hit an opponent while he is in the middle of a strike, it disrupts his rhythm, which in turn creates openings for you to follow up with a secondary attack.